Hello and welcome to this tutorial on game balancing, what it is and why we might need to do it for our games in Crayta. I'll also be talking through a couple of tips and ways to approach balancing your games. Game balancing is essentially taking some cool mechanics that you have in your game and making sure that they are the most amount of fun and offer the right experience that you want to deliver to your player. When I talk about balancing, I don't necessarily mean making sure that the game exactly matches the skill level of your player. What I mean is making sure that the game offers a dynamic that is interesting and that is what you want your game to feel like. Let me give you an example. In an obstacle course, a game might offer good game balancing if a player knows exactly where they need to go, so they know what the objective is, and exactly what could hurt them, where are the traps on that journey. If that stuff is really, really clear, then the player will be able to know this is the direction I want to go, and there might be shortcuts with risks attached to them. And that's what game balancing is all about. If I offer a shortcut, maybe it's riskier. Maybe there's a bigger jump that I need to make, or flaming arrows that are landing around that route. So I've offered a way of getting that somewhere quicker, but I've also added more risk to that route. And I've made it very, very clear that there is more risk on that route. So that's all talking about, making sure that your obstacles are really apparently dangerous. Make them red, make them spiky, make them on fire, whatever it needs to be to make sure it's very clear to your player that that is dangerous. Conversely, if I make a game, an obstacle course where there's some pickups, something that the players can pick up and that will give them more advantage over their environment, those pickups will need to be very, very clearly pickups as well that can transform my player. And what they do before I pick them up would also be a really good thing to communicate to the player. When it comes to multiplayer games, game balancing isn't necessarily about making sure that a game constantly is balanced. In fact, the most fun multiplayer games occur when the game is imbalanced and for some reason one team gets an advantage over the other. This is really exciting because the team that is then in control of the gameplay will need to try and maintain that control using whatever strategies they can, whilst the team that is experiencing the disadvantage will need to try and outwit the team that they're fighting against. And that leads me nicely onto the next point of game balancing. If I'm giving one team an advantage in a multiplayer game, there needs to be a way for the other team to counter that and possibly even overtake. Let me give you an example. If my game features a big gun and one team can grab that big gun halfway through the battle, it needs to be really obvious to the other team who on that team has the big gun, and then they can become pretty much a target for anyone on the opposing team. This is nicely balanced because it means that the player who has the big gun has an advantage. They can deal more damage to more people. And it means the other team that's fighting against that team has a way of countering it, i.e. they know who has the gun and they might think about outflanking that person, causing a distraction, or strategizing in some other way in order to return the balance to the gameplay. That's what I mean when I'm talking about game balancing in multiplayer games, is not necessarily keeping the status quo. It's more about how do you balance any risk with reward, any advantage with a way of countering it. The advantage and the countering can also come from the level environment. For example, in this game, which is They Come From Darkness, a game that AJ and I made for Global Game Jam, the level offers some opportunities for an imbalance in gameplay. For example, a villager will start up the top here. They can see the whole map, so they can see everyone below them, and it's really easy for them to navigate to lower levels simply by jumping along the rooftops, and they can get down to the bottom very quickly. Whereas a wraith starts all the way over here. So when they spawn in, they actually have a long journey before they can even get to the village and start affecting gameplay. And this is basically instead of a timed respawn. So I could have made it so that the wraith took 30 seconds to respawn, but I thought it'd be more interesting to add some kind of narrative element to the game that essentially took the same sort of time. Now, the imbalance in the environment means that one team has a clear advantage over the other team. And that means that the other team, I can give some different attributes in order to counter that. So the wraiths can hide in the darkness, they turn invisible. And they are also much faster. So they can approach things really stealthily. So I can't get villagers just standing here because there are multiple routes into the village. And also if these lights are off, the wraiths will be invisible and be able to jump past them. So I'm offering different ways of playing within the same game. Now, this game is not perfect in terms of balancing, and that leads me on to my final point about game balancing. In order to make your game nicely balanced, you are going to need to playtest your game with lots of people, different sized groups of people, maybe 1v1, maybe 6v6, however many people are able to get into your game. Playtest it a lot. Join in yourself and think about it whilst you're playtesting. What's creating an imbalance? Is it a good imbalance? Is it exciting? Is it a negative imbalance? As in, is it something that you didn't see coming, or now it's impossible to overtake the other team now that they have this powerful thing? Make sure you're writing notes whilst you're playing. And if at all possible, join in as just a spectator and listen to other players playing your game. For example, AJ often streams on a Wednesday and he'll pick and choose games to play. So that's a good opportunity for your game to get played and for you to see how players are watching how balanced your game is. And the same with Feedback Friday. On a Friday, if you join our Discord, discord.gg/Crayta, you can add your game to the roster for games to play on Feedback Friday, where we get lots of people playing the games and offering feedback and critiquing, and quite often balancing comes up as a key part of that. Both things that seem imbalanced in your game, and people are very ready to give solutions to those problems. Maybe try doing this, or have you considered balancing it in this way? It's really helpful to play test your game and to see other players playing your game. And who knows, you might find a new way of balancing an interesting game mechanic. And that's where you can create a really fun, unique and innovative and exciting game world to play. Hopefully this has been an interesting and useful tutorial on game balancing, and I look forward to seeing your games in Crayta.